Welcome into Dr. Darnise's House of Religion, Magic, and Conjure. Welcome into another session with me. Yes, I decided to come on here midweek um, because, violence against Black people in America doesn't take a break. And I really felt like I needed to come on and, address what's just happened to Dante Wright in Minnesota. Um, a couple of things have been on my mind. It's been really, hard to revisit this once again. And as Black people, we're fatigued, we are enraged, and all of it, right? All of it. And so we're without words in a way to talk about how America just keeps taking the lives of Black people. And so I thought about, I started to revisit the book that I made a video about James Cone and the cross and the lynching tree before. Um, so you can see that video in the mix here. But, James Cone was the founder of Black Liberation Theology, a college professor, theologian, an enormously important figure in the world of Black religion, trying to make sense out of Christian theology and the lived experience of Black people in America. And at the time that he wrote his first book, 1970, really working with Black power and the Bible, as he would put it. As James Cone would put it, he had the Bible in one hand and the Black Power movement in the other hand, or the newspaper in the other hand, trying to reconcile. And so, I raised this up, I'm thinking about it again, because, America calls itself a Christian nation. It continues to maintain this hypocrisy, right? That the whole world can see. The whole world can see it, and yet America maintains its identity as a Christian nation. And so I've just been ruminating on that, like, because the go to for a lot of white Christians is automatically to say, well, that person, that Black person, somehow deserved that death, right? And that's the part that, one of the things that makes Black people crazy and insane and fatigued and all that is because we're like, wow, we could just count off the minutes before we start to hear your version of why this Black person deserved to die this time. So you're not actually operating in any form of compassion or Christianity. You're not actually operating in that, right? And there's so many things that now that are being written on, white Christian nationalism and the hypocrisy within Christianity, white evangelicalism that is just uh, imploding under the weight of white supremacy. Lots of things being written on that, and I don't, necessarily want to make this video about that because I've talked about that other places, here and other places. I've written articles and things. So this, though, is really about Dante Wright and in the lineage of people who've been killed, Black people who've been killed in Minnesota, right? The trial about George Floyd's murderer is happening right now in Minnesota, which is already a ridiculous thing that has to be a trial when we all saw, right, what happened. And frankly, I didn't actually watch it because I couldn't bear that. But the world saw, right, what happened with this police officer and George Floyd. So there's a trial, though, as if that police officer has a defense. So here we are with Dante Wright. And the police officer says she mistakenly shot him with her gun. She only intended to shoot him with to tase him. And anyway, we live with the ridiculousness of that, and we live with the hypocrisy. We live with the hypocrisy of white Christians who will continue to make excuses, right, for the police force and for the American narrative that says Black people are criminals. And if the police pull over Black people, it's your own fault. And if you end up dying, it's your own fault. And they will bend over backwards to make that true for them, right? We see that all the time. And so, as I said, I've been thinking, okay, the cross and the lynching tree. And so, what is this book about? If this is the first time you're seeing this, um, James Cone, as I said, a theologian, makes this parallel between the cross that Jesus was crucified on and the tradition of lynching of black bodies in America. These police shootings are lynchings, really. And so James Cone in the book, he says, well, look, Jesus was a brown-skinned minority Palestinian, a minority person in his context who was executed by the state. You know, we're historically very clear that Jesus was this minority who was executed by the state. Now, Christianity picks up that story and, you know, turns it into the basis for religion, right? Whole crucifixion and resurrection. But if you just look at it in terms of a historical, what we can assess of the history is Jesus was this minority person living under occupation and oppression of the Roman government and executed. And so Cone says, here are black people in America who live under, you know, the oppression, the oppressor, the enslavement, the post-enslavement period, but still the Jim Crowism of America. And lynching just looks different in different times, right? Lynching can look like literally being hanged from a tree, but it can it's any sort of just rampant race-based murder. And so, as I said, I've just been looking at this again, and looking at some of my notes because I actually taught this book over the summer. I taught a class on it. Anyway, I taught on this a lot over last summer. And one of the things that James Cone says is that he made this parallel between Emmett Till and George Floyd being the watershed tipping point for civil rights movements. Emmett Till in 1955, that murder, that lynching of that teenage boy from Chicago who was in Mississippi, that so offended people that it set off an entire civil rights movement, right, in the 1950s. And here in 2020, the death of George Floyd set off, a resurgence of a civil rights movement. And so he says they're the sacrificial lambs of the civil rights movement. And what that made me think of was, does America require blood sacrifices from black people to make this democracy actually work? Because this thing called American democracy doesn't actually work the way it's supposed to work, right? When it comes to black people, this democracy doesn't actually work for black people. The police are supposed to protect and serve, but for black people, we look over our shoulders 2 and 3 times, right, when the police, because we don't assume they're there for our protection or to serve our best interest. So there's a gap between what America says it is and how black Americans experience America. And so my question is, and maybe you have some thoughts, is this deal where in order for America to really be America, to be free and the home of the brave, and to live into its civil liberties that are supposed to be for every American, in order for that to really be true, America has to be pushed into it. America is not yet that. And we make a mistake, an assumption, if we think, oh, America is this great democracy. Oh, America is perhaps on its way to being a great democracy, but in the meantime, here's what has to happen. It has to be forced, dragged, because people who have privilege, people who benefit from white supremacy, people who benefit from capitalism, they're not really ready for it to be a full democracy, because that would mean the reorientation of actual rights, the reorientation of money, right? The redistribution of money. That would mean a whole lot of other things. I was just looking in this text here. Kind of, yeah. Anyway, yeah, let me put the book down because it's causing me to look at some text in the book. But my point is, this thing called American democracy is not yet. It's not yet. And we see it. Up to 2021, we see it. It's not yet. And unfortunately, what is required apparently is that we fight for it and struggle for it and die for it. And even our children who get slaughtered in schools because of guns, we're not there. There really is not an American democracy. And now, the cornerstone or foundation of that democracy is supposed to be voting rights. But then we go to Georgia and we look and see what's happening in Georgia, and they're outright Jim Crowing it. Just with no care that it's all out on Front Street, right? In the Bible Belt. Here we are in Georgia, right? These Christian people, largely white Christian people, who wrap themselves in the flag with their white Jesus. And then they say to black people, well, we're going to make it harder for you, for black people and poor people. We're going to make it harder for you to vote. And if you are standing in line, we are not going to even give you a glass of water. Now, I don't know what kind of Jesus that is. What kind of... And yet, they can be in the Bible Belt. They can, go to church on Sunday or participate in their worship services anyway on Sunday, and then go to the State House in Georgia and create such a policy, knowing full well who they're really, attempting to discourage from voting. It's a Jim Crow law. So here we are looking at Daunte Wright, a young man, a young black man who was just minding his business. He gets pulled over for, people have been saying an air freshener, but apparently it was for allegedly expired tags or something, registration tags. And so he gets shot as a result of this interaction with the police. So the cross and the lynching tree, James Cone makes this comparison to say, in order to get to be who you say you are, in the case of Jesus, in order to get to being saved, you require a blood sacrifice. In your story, in order to get to a state of salvation, you require a blood sacrifice. So this brown man called Jesus, he was your sacrifice. In America, in order for us to really have a democracy is not freely offered, actually. In order to get to that, we will require those who are the most oppressed under this so-called democracy to actually force us to have that democracy. We're not really offering it. And if it's black people who have to take to the street, because black people are, so far under that oppressive structure, if it's black people who have to do it, then so be it. Your bodies will just line the street, because anyway, we're used to that. Right? So, think about how often we've heard, oh yeah, we need black women to come and save us. Black women come and save us. Black women in the political process, taking our political labor, right, to try to thwart to try to thwart Jim Crow. Black women are doing it, right? It's black women who are mostly doing that. And so anyway, I'm on here probably rambling, but I wanted to say, Daunte Wright, I wanted to say his name. I wanted to make it plain that here was a young black man who, once again, did not deserve to die. Here we are under a Christian nation that is so hypocritical about its very own religious orientation, and yet holding black people and expecting black people to be I don't know, super heroic in terms of Black Christianity, right? Black people are supposed to turn the other cheek. Black people are supposed to be peaceful. Black people are supposed to be forgiving. And yet the white Christians don't expect that of themselves even. They don't expect that of themselves. They don't require each other to, take care of each other. They don't even require that. So it's like, okay, well, Black Christians, you can you stay in that religion? James Cone tried to make it okay. James Cone said, let me see with this Christianity, can we save Christianity from white supremacy? And he thought he could. And he worked his whole professional life trying to do that. He created Black liberation theology in an attempt to show that it could be done, but I don't know. I mean, you have people like W.B. Du Bois who also tried to save America from itself. He tried. He spent his whole adult life trying to do so until he gave up when he was in his 60s and said, I'm moving to Ghana because I've given up on the American project. And so I don't know what to say. America just grinds us down. We have hope and it grinds us down. And sometimes the hope is a idea of a democracy. Sometimes that hope is the Constitution. Sometimes that hope is Christianity. I don't know. Sometimes that hope is Black nationalism. But in any case, Black people continue to have some kind of hope about this thing called America, the American project. And I'm just not sure that that's going to work out for us. And so in the comments, I'd be interested to know what you think. Is there any hope, really? Some Black people are like, we got to go. We got to leave this country. I don't know. I guess I would also end by saying, sorry, I've been talking all day, right? I teach and I've been talking all day. Dante Wright also called his mother, right? He called his mother when he had been pulled over. And so I made another video around Easter about the women in Jesus's life, right? And the role of Jesus and his mother, the role of his mother at his crucifixion, at his execution, the way George Floyd called upon his mother, and Dante Wright called upon his mother. Like, this is what's going on, Mom. And it just is going through my mind right now, right? The calling upon the mother, the matriarch, calling upon that maternal, matriarchal energy at a time when a person is at their last, is at the end, right? The person who brought him into the world and is the person who's with him in the end, right? Dante Wright's mother said that his girlfriend put the phone down next to Dante's body while he lay dying. And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a country that is so hypocritical, wraps itself in this thing called Christianity, and it just amazes. I think all Black people, it just amazes us to the point where we are enraged and or incapacitated by just almost despair around this. So anyway, if this video was meaningful to you, give me a like, share it, subscribe to the channel, of course. I always appreciate your support. I make these long videos, so I'm, I appreciate if you stay to the end of the video. And yeah, this is one where maybe we can have some real good comments going on about, is it Black people that are really going to make America great? Is it the blood of Black people that's going to push America into its democratic reality? I'm going to leave it there. Okay. That's it. Bye for now.